Yes. Okay, with Alan David Pritchard, the Pebble champion is the film that played at our festival. I should call it a screenplay, but I'm already saying it's a film. You're talking to us from China. You're in China right now, correct?
That's right. Yes, I'm in Shanghai.
So it's 10 p.m. on a Saturday here, and it's 10 a.m. where you are right now.
I'm in the future. It's 10 a.m. on Sunday here.
Is it fair to call this a fantasy coming of age story?
When you say fantasy, it's always been a fantasy to have the novel that I wrote turned into a screenplay, but the genre is not fantasy. The
Well, there's
genre
like
is
there's
coming of age.
magic pebbles, I guess, right? The magic of pebbles.
It's not magical pebbles. It is the pebbles, skimming pebbles is a metaphor for change and acceptance and for the journey that the main character is on. But the screenplay is based on the book called The Pebble Champion, and the process is every time the boy skims pebbles, he pretends he's a champion, and that is part of the process of his healing journey.
So tell me about the concept of this film. You said it's based on your novel that you wrote, right?
That's correct, yes. It began as a short story when I was 14 because I used to write a lot. My parents gave me an old battered typewriter when I was 9, and I used to just type around and make stories. And unfortunately, my mum passed away when I was 14, and I had no way of dealing with that, the grief and the pain that I was going through. And it wasn't just me, I have two brothers and a sister.
Mhm.
And I wrote this story called The Pebble Champion about a boy trying to deal with grief by skimming pebbles across the surface of the ocean or the sea. And then many years later, I decided to expand that short story into a novel, and I wrote the novel in my mid-30s, and it took me 13 years to find a publisher. And now, after I found the publisher and our contract ended, I took over the rights to the novel again, republished it under my full name, and then worked on the screenplay because it was always something I saw in my head as a movie, and the whole process was quite difficult for me because when you're a novelist, you have this luxury of using language and all of that. And I didn't realize that when you write a screenplay, it's a completely different approach
Yeah.
that needs to be taken.
Well, it's like less on the page. Like a novel, everything's got to be on the. It's a metaphor too. Everything's got to be on the white page, right? And
Yeah,
sometimes for
quite right.
screenplay, less is more, I guess.
Yeah, and also you language is important.
Yeah,
Um, and how you construct sentences and how you describe things, and
yeah.
that's important. But with cinema, it's a completely different aesthetic and a completely different discipline. It's more about the visual, and that's the part that I found quite challenging.
So this one, so the novel took you. So you wrote the novel, so it seems like a kind of a personal story for you. Is it? How autobiographical is it?
Actually, it's only there are two aspects to the main character that can be considered autobiographical. Just like the main character, I lost my mother at a young age, and just like my character, I also had to deal with my bewildering sexuality and my identity. But the actual story itself, I grew up in apartheid South Africa, and which is a completely different world to the world that Chris, my character, inhabits. And the story, when I originally wrote it, was set in just the coast and the city. That's all I said. I didn't put, anything. I didn't make it more specific until the publisher said to me, "You need to have a more specific time and place." And at that time, I was living on a small island called the Isle of Wight, which is off the south coast of England. And because I was enjoying my life there and the community that of friends that I had made, I decided to rewrite and go back to the novel and change it and uh, put it specifically on the Isle of Wight. And that's changed everything. And there's no way that what happens to Chris on the Isle of Wight is similar to what happened to me. It's just those two key elements, one of grief and the other one of identity, that are basically
Well,
autobiographical.
those are two big, I guess pardon the phrase, nuggets. Those are
Yeah.
two big autobiographical nuggets that basically that you've gone through. So you're kind of like that's sort of the blueprint thematically. You're just talking about the blueprints, and then you kind of change the kind of the story, the concept itself within that blueprint, I guess, right? Those two big
Yes, absolutely.
themes, yeah,
Yeah. But the things that happened to Chris did not happen to me. Chris is a single, he's only a, he's a single child.
yeah,
His parents have been separated for 10 years. Nothing, that wasn't
yeah.
in my experience
It
at all.
raises the stakes of him going to being have to live with a father that he doesn't really know, I guess, right? So in the novel and the screenplay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because everything, when he moves to the island, it's a completely new beginning and he
Yeah.
has to create and navigate new relationships, which adds different layers of complexity to the journey that he's on.
But it's almost like it's like a cliche to say this, but when people experience like death of a parent when they're in their formative years, it's like the childhood ends at 14, I guess. Like it's there's two parts of your life, one before your mom when your mom was alive, one when your mom
Quite right.
is not there
No,
anymore.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And no one prepares you for that
Course not.
because it was an accident.
But even
And
if
it's
it
something
wasn't,
that
like, how can you be prepared for that, right? So,
yeah, yeah, quite right. But it wasn't as if, it was unfought and it's a terrible tragedy that some
gotcha.
people suffer a lot before they pass, and you're aware that they're suffering, and you know
Yeah,
that there will
gotcha.
be part.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the one where suddenly you wake up and it's gone. You
One
know,
day she's there, the next, like the last time you speak to her is
yeah.
like you wouldn't think in a million years that'd be the last time you speak to your mom, I guess.
And that's part of the start of Chris's journey is
Yeah.
he's constantly replaying the things he used to say and the last things he used to say to her. And that's something he has to work through because it really is about more than the fact that he's a gay teen is almost, I mean, it's almost a sub theme to the story. It's the focus of the story is how does a young teenager deal with the death of a parent? How do you get through that? And I didn't want to have because I've seen other movies where the characters go through a short grieving period till they reach a point and then their story can begin. And as part of their story, I wanted the whole grieving process to be the story because I wanted people who either watch the film or read the book who have gone through something similar to relate on a day-to-day basis. It's
Mhm.
almost on a day-to-day basis that the story takes place, rather than, it takes place over a summer, but it's that day. How do I get through each and every single day?
Mhm.
And that's where Chris has to find and dig deep to find the inner strength that he needs, not just to deal with that grief, but also to deal with his emerging sexuality.
So there's a lot, to say the least, there's a lot going on.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. And that I didn't want it to be a simple A to B story. So there are lots of flashbacks, and in the novel, you really get into the thoughts of the character. It's written from the first person perspective, and I wanted the screenplay to almost reflect that. So there are no scenes or voiceovers of other characters. Everything is seen directly through his eyes, so that you have this direct relationship with the character.
So if it's made
Um,
into a film directorially, everything would be seen from his perspective, I
Yeah,
guess.
absolutely, because it's his journey, and I didn't want, and I don't want the film to be where we look at him from a distance. It's got to be you have to inhabit his thoughts as much as he does in order to get all the nuances and the pain and the joy and you'll see itself, once the movie ends, there is this redemptive process, but I wanted you to be part of that journey rather than observe it as an audience.
On that note, would obviously I'm assuming it would be a dream of yours to have this into made this
Oh,
into a film.
wow. Absolutely. And it's gone through so many, the process of adapting it, first of all, my first draft was really rubbish. It wasn't good at all because as the writer, you and as the author, you keep everything. I don't want to lose anything, so I ended up with this script that went on for nearly 2.5 hours. It was still, and I had to trim it down and then trim it down again and make it more cinematic. And I reached a point where I went, well, actually, I need to reach out to other people who know more than I do about this and ask for their help. So I did enlist the help of screen consultants who said, no, you need to change this, you need to do that. And then entering it into festivals like the one that I did with Wild Sound, and then getting feedback from that and looking at the feedback, going, okay, right, let's now move on. So the version that Chicago Feedback chose as best screenplay is actually version 6. And based on the feedback that was given there, it's now I'm working with somebody else right now to see can we take it up to a level where it instead of getting 8 out of 10 in a festival, it can get 9 or 10 out of 10. And that's been an exciting process.
Well, I think it's a ready script, right? So it's when the getting an 8 out of 10 in our perspective with the submissions, it's that's a pretty that's pretty amazing. Like that you've gotten like and you've gotten to other festivals like Rhode Island International Film Festival. Like that's pretty. You got semifinals. That's a pretty big festival. You should be very over the moon for that. And then also
Yeah.
getting into other festivals as well. So I think
Yeah.
that
So
the world is telling
let,
you that the script is ready.
yeah, it's getting there. It really is getting there. But the script was still a little bit too long at 119
Yeah.
pages, and I needed it to get it down to as it was recommended. So I'm working with another screenwriter who's giving me advice and help on how to make it between 90 and 100 minutes, deciding
It's
what
because
to
yeah,
leave and
it's
what
like a
to keep.
spec, I guess. It's considered a spec, so they want it kind of
Yeah,
shorter, I guess, right?
that's
And
right.
then if it
Yeah.
gets if it gets greenlighted for a film, then that's a whole other writing process.
Yes, that's
You'll
the
have
next
to.
journey. That's the next adventure that it'll go on. So, but it has definitely been a labor of love for me, right from the age of 14 all the way till this advanced age I
To
now
yeah, to
am.
whatever age you're at now. But you've also won awards for your one of short screenplay, right? One of Us.
Yes, I was very lucky with that. So I wrote a short, basically, I wrote three one-act plays first, which I had produced at schools in South Africa and competitions there and festivals there, and it did well. And then I decided to take one of those plays and turn it into a screenplay. And that's how One of Us was born. And it just took off in terms of the festival circuit. It was a bit too long to be a short and a bit too short to be a feature, but yet it still won a huge amount of awards. In fact, it was yesterday I got a notification that it is a semi-finalist at the Filmatic Film Festival, and that's great. But it's also won Best LGBT Screenplay at the Cannes Film Awards,
Yeah.
at the Bowery Film Festival. It's won, and just a whole host of awards. Uh, However, it hasn't brought me closer to finding a producer or getting it, to people who would go, now I want to take this a bit further. But I'm going to keep going with that. I'm not going to stop that process. I've now reduced it down to 20 minutes. So now I have a proper short. And I've started to put that out to the festival circuit. And that's what won the semi-finalist award yesterday.
But the has the play been produced?
The play was produced
Yeah.
in South Africa, but it hasn't been, and but that was done on a non-professional basis at schools and at school festivals
Okay.
and drama clubs and things. That was Red-Handed. That was the play was called Red-Handed,
Yeah.
and I like the concept of. I like the idea of, you know, boys being stuck inside one room and not being able to get out and having to deal with each other and their demons because they try to steal exam papers and one of their friends locks the door and they're now stuck in the room with the exam papers, but they can't get out and they know they're going to get caught red-handed. And that's, yeah, I was very pleased with the results of that screenplay. So I'm hoping that that'll give some kudos when I'm trying to promote Pebble Champion.
Well, it's a great idea for a stage play. It's like one location and then the stakes are high right from the beginning, right? So
Yeah.
it's yeah.
Yeah, and also when it was originally staged, I just had three tables in a horseshoe formation, and the actors were inside that little space. And whenever they had these flights of fantasy where they imagined how their parents and important people in their lives would react. Then other characters would come and talk to them across the table. And that's something that was, I'm also thinking about possibly producing it here in Shanghai at the school at which I teach right now, but then using multimedia. So having the actors on the stage, but their interactions with their imagination as a film, which is screened above, and the audience can see the two.
Gotcha. Well, it's fantastic. It's just like you're a busy guy. So what are you doing in China right now?
Well, I decided I'm a trained teacher, so I began teaching in South Africa. Then I went over to the UK and taught in the UK, and I became a teacher trainer there. And then I decided just let's go to China, let's do something different. And one of my former students worked in China as a DJ, and he said, "Come over." And I thought, okay, let's try this just as an adventure. And I was only going to stay for a year. And it's been 12 years now, and I teach at an international school, training teachers as well as being a full-time teacher. And that's kind of my other passion that I have.
And you're just in like, how does that work though? Do you have to go like, in terms of your like green card status, like your,
No, if you're employed, you get given, you're an expat, so you're allowed to stay here on a work permit. So
gotcha.
I've been on the work permit here for the last 12 years.
And you're seeing, I guess you're seeing from the inside in a lot of ways from the Chinese culture, right? It's always prominent in the Western world what China is
Again,
doing.
yeah, but it's also you've got to remember there's a difference between what is portrayed in the media,
Sure.
what people see in places like Chinatown and what have you in different
Yeah.
countries, as opposed to actually being here, being part of the local community. It's a completely different experience, but one that I'm thoroughly enjoying.
Yeah, of
It's just
course.
been absolutely lovely and enriching and a genuinely beautiful experience.
And if it's truthful, all we're doing is we're just seeing the macro. We're just seeing the political kind
Yeah,
of points of view,
that's the case. It
right?
was the same thing when I lived in South Africa, during the apartheid era. Uh, Everybody associated South Africa with apartheid. So you had this immediate bad country, bad people, bad. And for those of us who were living there and who were not part of, I mean, we
Yeah,
were part of the country, but we didn't align ourselves with the
sure.
government's philosophy and viewpoints, and and we fought against that. It was a different world. So it's a world that other people didn't see. And South Africa is an incredibly beautiful country
Yeah.
in terms of natural beauty and wildlife. It's just, stunning. But I even still to this day get people say to me, "Oh, you're South African. Oh, does that mean you're racist?"
Yeah.
And it's, oh
That's the
my
first
goodness,
that's the
it's
first
been,
thing that comes up, right? Like if you're
yeah,
white
it's
from
been
South
so long
Africa.
ago. Yeah. I mean, in
But
fact, my next piece is going to be based on the one that I'm busy drafting at the moment is a story about a white South African boy and a black American teacher, and again set in a classroom with no way out, and the dynamics that it
yeah.
creates. So that's my
Such a
new piece.
weird question too, right? Because the people who are racist don't know they're racist. So I can't imagine anybody go, "Oh yeah, I'm totally racist." Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
if someone ever asked that question.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what you should
Um,
do next time someone asks you. Yeah, I'm totally am. Yeah,
yeah.
100%.
But
So
I'm lucky. South Africa's not that way anymore, thank goodness.
no,
But
yeah.
it was really interesting to live through that period, and was I'm fortunate enough to have lived through three major cultural changes in my life. Growing up in South Africa until I was 30, moving to the UK for 16 years, now being in China. And I think it enriches you as a human being to uh, immerse yourself in different cultures and see how that makes you a better human being. It makes you more insightful. It gives you a wider worldview. And I think as a writer, it also has huge
I
benefits.
can I can argue that Mandela is the most important figure of the 20th century. So
He is one. I would say the second person beyond that is David Attenborough. I think Mr. David or Sir David Attenborough has done what he's done in terms of making us aware of the things we need to do for our planet and the appreciation for our planet is, yeah, nobody else has reached that. And I think that's equally important.
it's just that it's the attribute of forgiveness in moving forward and not having grievances. and of like he had every right to be pissed off,
Absolutely. And
right?
I mean that's and it's such a but the question is, have we learned from that?
Well, we should like that.
Yeah, yeah,
It should
yeah,
be like, well, I certain people have, right? But it's like you still like obviously you see the Western world politics. It's like one guy
yeah.
in particular has not learned from that at all. He probably doesn't even
No,
know who
and
Dell
you
is, right?
watch,
But
yeah, you listen to the mudslinging and you listen to the sort of anger and hatred going
yeah,
forward and saying, well, this is our future, but you can't have a future devoid of that if you've got leaders who espouse philosophies that still, and what example does it set to younger people in terms of what it means to forgive, in terms of what reconciliation means, in terms of being able to, to debate and differ on ideas. And we stress this a lot as teachers, I think around the world. And I'm an IB English B teacher, and one of the things we do is we try and have global citizens that are sensitive to the needs of the world, caring human beings. And it's really difficult to sow those seeds when the role models that are out there on social media and in politics and leaders do not have those same values. Uh, yeah. So
but
I'm just trying
sometimes
to figure
people historical figures come back. Like it depends on the moment, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, who's Mandela? And then all of a sudden 2050 or whatever, and all of a sudden he comes back in the limelight, and the things that he did is the lessons are learned then. Sometimes lessons don't get learned until the world is ready for it, and we're it's kind of because of social media. We're kind of in a selfish place right now as a whole,
quite right.
right?
Yeah.
So then we once we get over that, perhaps these lessons can be learned a little bit better. And learning from the mistakes of others who are selfish and who are have grievances and who are, narcissistic. And we learn from those tendencies as well, like what not to do. So
And that's something with the screenplay, The Pebble Champion, the one
yeah.
thing that helps Chris go through, I mean, to get through the process of grief and pain and hurt and guilt and fear and is the kindness of others.
Yeah. I love how you
And
brought that back. That was amazing.
yeah, because in the novel, you'll find that I didn't want him to go through like some, when he meets his father Marmaduke, Marmaduke is not an unpleasant character. He's a really lovely human being,
Yeah.
and all of the characters around Chris are really lovely human beings, and that's what he needs in order to heal and grow and change and become a better human being. It's because of the kindness of others, and that's I hope one of the messages that people will see and take away with them. If the film ever gets made.
Well, yeah, and this is the happy ending to a tragedy in a sense, like your story, without giving anything away. But I'm sure you experienced where people who had the same problems that you did personally, like they don't make it, I guess, right? There's still a lot of there is like unfortunately there's like a lot of suicides of and etc. because they don't
Yeah.
have quote unquote nice people around them, understanding people around them. Like
That's a terrible tragedy
yeah.
because it's all they needed was kindness.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
kindness is something that is free and can be given freely.
It builds
Even
confidence too, right?
yeah,
So,
yeah, absolutely. Even a smile, which costs nothing, can change somebody's day.
and then when there's judgment and when there's anger, that fuels the depression, right? So,
Yeah, and it's like a poison, you've got to get
yeah.
it out your system, otherwise it just makes things considerably worse.
Yeah. No, it's a really I love your like because if you we'll link up your website alandavidpritchard.com and you have poetry that you've done. It's a really nice website too. It's really nicely placed and you have people can buy your novel online. They can see your scripts.
Yeah,
They can see your
and also what
poetry.
I've done is I've also been quite successful with my poetry videos.
Yeah.
I turn my poems into videos, and they've done really well. One of them was the director's choice at the Hollywood Poetry Film Festival, and the poetry films that I've made and little videos that I've made have been just as successful as one of us. And that's another little part that I enjoy, and that's something I do on my own. I don't need to have studios or anybody else come in to get their approval. I just sit down and make those myself.
Yeah, and
So
I guess you have two of your poetry videos on the website right now and that people can take
I've
a look
got
at.
yeah, I think I've got 4 or 5. I can't remember. And then I do have a YouTube uh,
Oh,
channel, which
gotcha.
has
Because
got
I just
all
see
of
two of them on your website. So
there's more. If you should, if you go to
the link,
the
yeah,
actual the tab that
yeah,
says advancing backwards, and then you scroll down, you'll see
yeah.
there are um,
Yeah, it's got
the
some good views. One is like, yeah, it's got like two over 2,000 views. Got some good subscribers. So yeah,
yeah. Uh, One of them should have about 20,000 by now.
yeah. I just
Um,
subscribed.
yeah. Oh, fantastic. Thank you. Um, but it's that's another side of my creativity that I really enjoy because that's when you create poetry videos, you're taking one line at a time, which is different to reading a poem on a page where you've got all of the information right in front of you. And by taking one line at a time and foregrounding it visually, to music. And if you go to my in the YouTube channel, I do have a lot of narrated poems, but the ones that have won awards are all ones that I've found the right piece of music to
Mhm.
and the right visuals to complement one line at a time. So you focus and you get that unit of meaning and you can digest that in a lot more detail. And hopefully that's just a different way of experience the beauty of poetry.
Yeah, Missing You has over 20,000 views.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that one I created a long time ago and that's
yeah.
done well. Mm.
So that said, so you obviously, I know it's not the same thing, but you obviously can tell a story through visuals. What do you ever think of directing your own short script?
I don't have enough experience
Yeah.
in doing that. It's something that it's like when I started writing uh, screenplays, I needed to read other screenplays, and then most importantly, I read the it's like the Bible about writing screenplays called Story, and learning the craft. And I don't have enough experience in the craft of directing, but
Well, I've been
hopefully
fortunate
in the
enough
future I'll get there.
I've been fortunate enough to interview a lot of people, and a lot of people in your position. They they basically, because obviously you don't know storytelling, right? So they basically produce it, and then they hire somebody to direct it for with them. You know, small film, right? Because
Mm.
this your short script doesn't need much in terms of locations, etc. And then they hire somebody, and then they see how the process. It's like almost like their film school. They see how the
Yeah.
process works, and then you're like, oh, okay. And then they, every time I interview them, they're like, I'm directing the next one.
Yeah. Oh, I'd love that. I'd love that. I'd love to be part of that entire process just to see
Yeah.
how it works and go,
So it's
oh,
just an
yeah,
idea,
I can,
just something to
yeah,
throw
yeah,
it at you,
absolutely.
right?
And
So yeah,
oh, and I'm open to all possibilities
yeah,
because I think you need to be. Otherwise, you recreate yourself as you grow older, and it's always great to go on new adventures. Just like moving to a country is a new adventure,
yeah,
learning a new craft is a new adventure. So if you see it as an adventure, you're bound to get to where you want to be.
100%. And yeah, it's just something that like that's the greatest meet. I'm of course I'm prejudiced and I'm basically biased, but basically it's the greatest medium of them all because you're using your visuals and your music and your words and your poetry movies. And just like when you're making a short film, it's like you're adding all those elements, sound design,
Yeah.
cinematography, acting, all
Yeah,
etc. Right?
there's editing, there's
Editing,
editing,
yeah,
there's production, there's all that
yeah,
goes to that.
yeah,
Uh, and that's what makes it so wonderful is because you've got all of these different skills that you bring together.
yeah.
It's like an orchestra, with all
Sometimes
the
and
different.
sometimes ignorance is bliss. It's just sometimes you just jump into something and you'll figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely. And you learn from the deep end
Yeah.
rather than
So just something that because like I say, I'm fortunate enough to interview a lot of people, and you seem to have the mind for it. So just something to keep in mind.
Well, then I could sort of end this by saying, well, watch this space, or because even though I'm nearly 60, I still regard myself as a work in progress.
Yeah,
You never really end. If you're a creative human being and you're somebody who likes to create things, uh, then you never stop, and nothing's ever perfect because you've got another new challenge, and then that's a wonderful journey to go on.
on that note, that's a great way to finish things off. And they also
Ah,
say
thank you so
60 is
much.
the new 40, right? So you're really 40 years
Absolutely.
old. Yeah. So
But I'm not there yet. Still have 2 years to go.
there
But
you
thank
go.
you very, very much for this opportunity.
All
I
right, that
genuinely
was
appreciate it.
awesome.
It's been a
Congratulations on
pleasure.
everything and good luck. And maybe
Thank
we'll
you.
talk again when one of your films is produced.
That will be a delight. Thank you so much, sir.